If you were to ask me, Mr. J, do you love the Scooby-Doo franchise? Then I'll ask you, is the sky blue? I love it because there's the good, the bad, the mediocre, the weird, the revolutionary, and the return to form. Even as it will outlast the heat death of the universe, I'll still love it long past my demise. Unfortunately, there's always going to be the truly rotten egg in every franchise once in a while. To be more specific, it's that one iteration where it goes against everything the original concept had stood for. And you should already know where this is going. The one iteration of Scooby-Doo that I have a distaste for is Velma.
You know what 420 is, right?
Yeah. It's code for adults who still watch cartoons.
You suck!
On the other side of the metaphorical coin that is animation, there's also the worst offenders to the craft. Whether it's from poor quality all across the board, executive meddling, or the wrong person spearheading their department, there's a multitude of factors that can result in such a dismal end project. It's either so bad it's good, or it's awful enough to make you cringe into the fourth dimension. So untense yourself, grab some chips and dip, and enjoy the dirty fireworks, because I'll be going over what I consider to be the worst of animation in no particular order. Starting with a short overview of the production, Velma was announced on February 10th, 2021, from the Animation Magazine article, end quote, Animation's Velma, a new comedic origin story starring the unsung and underappreciated brains of the Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated gang, Velma Dinkley. End quote. Yeah, sure, comedic origin story. It's a show that's about as comedic as the Black Plague, but I'll play along. The new iteration of Scooby-Doo also changed around the races of Velma, Daphne, and Norville. And if you didn't know that was Shaggy's real name, you're okay. Because if I'm being honest, I always thought his name was Shaggy Rogers until my dad told me that he was actually named Norville. I learned it at the age of 8, but I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Getting back on topic, we got Glenn Howerton as Fred Jones, Sam Richardson as Norville Rogers, and Constance Wu as Daphne Blake. I don't know most of their roles, but the ones I do know are respectively Dennis Reynolds from It's Always Sunny, Moonin from Rise of the TMNT, and the Mayor of Ninjago from the Lego Ninjago movie. Another interesting thing is Matthew Lillard expressed his support for the cast on his Twitter. And to give you some context, Warner Brothers didn't cast him here or in Scoob. If you're lost, Shaggy is the main role he's been cast as in a Scooby-Doo production, barring Get a Clue, ever since the live-action Scooby-Doo movies. Be it a PR move or genuine professionalism, I tip my hat to you, Mr. Lillard. Oh, and Scooby-Doo is not there. The only reference I have for that is from Wikipedia, where a snippet is supposedly told by Warner Brothers, "Hey, you can't use the dog." Though please take this reference with a grain of salt. Lastly, the premiere happened on January 12th, 2023, and to nobody's surprise, almost everyone who wasn't drinking the proverbial Kool-Aid unanimously dunked on Velma.
But also that he was just another entitled rich guy who might kill someone because he has a tiny dong.
And to provide context, what is Velma about? This series is a new take on how the Mystery Incorporated crew was formed in their hometown of Crystal Cove, and how it truly happened. This version is obviously centered around Velma Dinkley, voiced by Mindy Kaling, who is supposed to be the brains of Mystery Inc. And this time around, the Scooby-Doo gang aren't friends, and are actively at odds with each other. Right. Also, the person Velma is looking for is an actual killer, going around debraining teenage girls. On the writing side, Velma tries to be this snappy, satirical, dramatic, pulse-pounding mystery thriller, but it's more of a painfully slow, juvenile, and poorly written adult animation. Velma also has the problem that adult animation has faced in recent years, where the copious use of blood, nudity, visceral carnage, cursing, and badly timed comedy to mitigate emotion is how you know it's for adults. I'll get into the nitty-gritty in a few minutes, but bear with me as, surprisingly, I have some praise for Velma. Alright, before I rip into Velma for being a horribly written piece of garbage, I do, however, have some nice things to say about its art direction. That may come as a shock to everyone who's only here to bash, but there's actually some effort in Velma. The animation and art style are top tier. I give kudos to the character designers because they gave us a bunch of wonderful looking character models. Also to whoever was spearheading the shots where everything is saturated with color for a cutesy high school vibe, or dulled and darkened to make some nightmare fuel, top tier work. Mwah. And the animation team was bringing their A game. The general animation was fluid enough to show a hint of quality, but holy crap, for Velma's hallucination segments, the fluidity goes up to an 11. I want to shake the hands of everyone in the animation and art departments, except for this hand. The people in charge of both departments knew what they were doing, and they delegated the right people on the art side of Velma. Though, I wish everyone here were working on a better project, because they all did a wonderful job. It's just tied to such awful writing. Ah! Well, with all my praise out of the way, it only gets worse from here, folks. It only gets worse from here.
You know what 420 is, right? Yeah, it's code for adults who still watch cartoons.
I don't know if this is adding something new to the table, but I say Velma fails as a series because of its lack of immersion. I should elaborate here, though. From my perspective, good immersion is the feeling you get when a world is done correctly by the team behind a piece of entertainment, where the characters, the story, and the little details feel like a real ecosystem. A world that genuinely has problems and conflicts that feel authentic, and aren't there to vindicate or demonize, contrive the characters, or make me convinced the creators need serious therapy. It's a world you would really want to live in if someone gave you the option. That's the power of good writing, stringing every element together. But as you can see from the topic of the video, that does not apply to Velma. Hey, I mean, it's not like almost all the writers have never written for animated content before. And it's not like Grandy and Colling don't have experience in the field of animation and are relying on their limited field of live-action adult sitcoms. Right, guys? They knew what they were doing. It's not like they were way in over their heads and had to rely on people with actual experience and skill in animation. That's crazy talk! And since because I told you so isn't a legitimate reason why I say the writing of Velma is bad, I'll go into detail of why the characters, world, story, and overall writing failed. To begin this round, I would like to pick... Almost all the characters are unlikable, and we want to see them eviscerated in a fiery blast of atomic carnage. For 500, please. Who to start with? Oh, I know, Fred. He went from a lovable himbo who created impressive traps to a man-child who can't do anything for himself. Norville went from being the fraidy cat comic relief who ate tons of food with Scooby-Doo to a boring dude who's unafraid of monsters. And to make it worse, he got turned into a bland simpleton. Daphne gets a pseudo-pass. If she wasn't as grating as everyone else, the Mean Girl act would have landed. I wouldn't mind seeing a new take where she's a little more rough around the edges and brash towards the world. And Velma. She went from being the sharp-witted and logical member of Mystery Inc. to being Mindy Colling's self-insert and political puppet who has nary a shred of intelligence or any form of critical thinking. This version of Velma is quite literally the idiom of not the sharpest crayon in the knife drawer. To tie it back around, the problem is you've taken most of the cast and fundamentally warped their core traits and motives away from what made the Mystery Inc. gang Mystery Inc. Why are we going to care about them when these assholes don't get their comeuppance? We enjoy a character or the main cast of a show being wholly irredeemable because karma throws a monkey wrench at them for being horrible people. Not when these morons don't get called out on their hypocrisy or antics. Unlikable characters plus every episode involving shoehorned meta-humor or a topical joke equals a dismissive attitude from the audience. Velma is just a bunch of unlikable characters pretending to sound smart and profound when in actuality, they have the depth of a puddle and the emotional intelligence of a coat hanger.
I mean, Fred literally can't feed himself.
That's not true. No, you just cut the food and put it on the, what's the dumb thing called? A dingle hopper.
Great. Show us.
The world suffers equally, and that's because it bends to the whims of Velma, instead of throwing a curveball at Velma and her learning to deal with those incoming challenges. Now this is going to sound like an odd comparison, but hear me out. Current celebrity animations and generic isekais share a common ground. They're both painfully boring. Most of the time, we know the characters aren't going to face conflicts and grow from them, and they solve the problem with minimal effort, facing no major consequences or changes to their world or way of life. At that point, it becomes a wish fulfillment fantasy you make because you can't face reality like an adult. Pulling from the last segment, I already don't care for most of the characters in Velma. Why should I care about their world when I don't care about the characters? The world changes through their interactions, and in turn, the conflicts and hardships occurring change them. However, when the characters don't do anything to build up their world, we don't craft any meaningful attachments to their story and conflict. And when your characters don't actively face consequences for their actions, or are put through the ringer to get stronger or wiser, it gets tiring watching the same song and dance play out. Which is why the second best moment of the series is watching Velma get hit by Sheriff Cogburn's police car. Because even if Velma doesn't grow from that experience, she totally deserves it by extension that she repeatedly treated Fred like dirt, coerced Daphne to use her mom's police car, and guilt-tripped Norval into driving to and stealing food from a diner. So by utilizing that context, I think it's appropriate that Velma got run into.
I'm out past curfew, and I think the movie Serpico is boring. What are you gonna do about that?
Okay, now we're at story. And what do you want me to say about the story? It's bad. What else did you expect? Any suspense or tension flew out the brick wall. Velma wants us to believe it's a darker version of Scooby-Doo, a mystery-solving thriller that keeps us engaged with drama and suspense. To tell you the truth, it's none of those things because the story has to stop every 5 minutes to show how out of touch the creative minds are with regular people, make fun of Fred's cocktail wiener, breaking the fourth wall to tell us how stupid this trope or cliché is, then commit to that trope or cliché, or glaze over a topical issue not pertaining to the story. Look, I don't know what else you want me to say about the story before I move on, other than it's a jumbled mess of contrived ideas. I actively don't want to remember it. That is how you know you have written a bad story.
But also that he was just another entitled rich guy who might kill someone because he has a tiny dong.
Now we're moving on to the worst offender, the writing. Yippee! Velma's writing drags on, it lacks subtlety, fails to be engaging, and ultimately comes off as grating. The writing crew for Velma, by what I can gather, don't have experience writing for courtroom dramas or serialized mysteries, and only a few of them have experience in writing for animation. The rest have experience writing live-action adult dramas and comedies. And with all that said, I'm not putting a month of time aside to watch everything Mindy Kaling related. I don't think that's a humane thing to do to myself. And that's why I don't care for Velma.
He said it! He said it!
The writing fails to make me feel invested in the characters, the world they live in, and the story being told. The meta-humor just amplifies the problems I have for the series because it removes the remaining care I have for everything. I don't care about Velma, not because of it being crass and juvenile. I love certain characters who fall under my terminology and definition. I don't care for Velma because it's uninventive with its source material. From what I can obviously tell, the writers have certain restrictions using the Scooby-Doo IP with a more mature setting, though they still have the freedom to take it somewhere new. But speaking as someone who's seen it twice, if you've seen adult animation from this past decade, then by proxy, you've seen Velma. And it's sad because all the pieces are in place for a good adult animated project from Warner Brothers, or a more mature Scooby-Doo iteration that positively challenges the original. And unfortunately, the only power I wield right now is to point out Grandy and Colling's bad imagination. If you want my honest recommendation, watch any iteration of Scooby-Doo other than Velma. Unless you have people to trash on it with, it's not worth your time and energy because it will wear down on your physical and emotional stamina. The only things worth watching are the 2 cockroaches doing it in the girls' locker room, and of course, Velma getting hit by Sheriff Cogburn's police car.
And I think the movie Serpico is boring.
It's even better the second time around. But honestly, that's it. And to save you from wasting 3 hours of your life watching it, it was Fred's mom. She wanted to replace Fred's brain because he would destroy the family business. It's not a mystery, it's just Victoria Jones using her backstory to reinforce the message of Velma being bashed over our heads that straight white men are stupid, they can't make or do anything on their own, and if you don't agree with that train of logic, you have a fragile ego, low self-esteem, and a tiny wiener. That's what I collected as the message of Velma over the time I watched it. And for S's and G's, I'll make some predictions about Season 2. Crystal Cove discovers the murder of Sheriff Cogburn at the police station and goes into comically stupid panic mode again. Velma proceeds to gaslight Fred, Daphne, Norville, who will most likely get longer hair or dreads, into solving the case. Velma will manipulate the gang into working together with 0 consequences. The relationships will sort themselves out in the most grating and contrived way possible. Velma keeps punching down on Fred and takes his babbling and crude ideas to begin turning it into Mystery Inc. And when Fred asks why she made it instead of him, there's going to be a shoehorned meta joke about how stupid white men are and how they can't make anything intelligent or worthwhile, and that the only way they can make something is to take it from someone else. And in between that, berating Fred's tiny Frankfurter for the upteenth time. The entirety of Season 2 is going to be 3 hours of nothing but tell, don't show. There's going to be meta jokes that punch down on anyone who loves the old Mystery Incorporated, and anyone who likes them are pathetic conservative losers. There is going to be a subplot with Amon, Sophie, and Dia that goes nowhere, and is just attempting to make us laugh. Norville gets a Great Dane and integrates him as the 5th member of Mystery Incorporated, and they use Operation Scooby,
Special Covert Operations Brain Initiative, or Scooby.
Scooby? And wait, what did Scooby do?
and utilize it to place a detective's brain inside the dog and shoehorn some way in for him to speak. Around episode 8 or 9, Velma gives the gang their roles through a trial and error montage to try and make us sympathize with her. The murderer's identity is revealed, and their reason is just another contrived character motivation that is a topical issue Grandy will jab at us with no subtlety or nuance. And finally, at the end of episode 10, it all wraps up with Mystery Inc. being formed and the town praising them as heroes, with the last bit of the episode dedicated to a snide, egotistical, and condescending inner monologue ending the series, and we all get to breathe a sigh of relief as they drive away in the off-brand mystery machine towards the open road. Please remember, I'm not making these predictions out of spite or malice. I'm merely taking the writing present in Velma and making the most logical answers I can from what I have. I could be wrong, I could be right, it all depends on how Season 2's writing is. Consider that Season 2 is coming out on the 25th of this month. We'll have our answer in T-minus 5 days. And to the writers of Velma, if you want me to eat crow, then I hope you learned your lesson from Season 1. Unless you were firing on all cylinders and appreciate Scooby-Doo, I'll be keeping my expectations low. I'm honestly not holding my breath over Season 2 because it will most likely be more of the same. It's animated content aimed at adults. Did you really expect the writing quality to be pulled out of the Marina Trench? I'm Mr. J, and after I'm done here, I'll be watching Bluey to get the taste of Velma's dumpster fries out of my consciousness. Oh, and don't worry about Velma, I have a solution to fix that. Oh no, that did not sound good. I'll see you later, guys. Bye, gotta go. Oh no, no.